Right, we are back. There's me. There's Carlo over there.
Hello, hello.
It's been a year since everyone here's last seen us. Standard joke about New Year's, all that rubbish. So yeah, welcome to 2021, Carlo. It's 2021. You're a completely different person now. What are you going to be doing differently
Am
this year to what you did last year?
Might paint a mini.
Seems good. Seems good to me.
Let's hope. Let's hope.
Did you?
How about you, Mickey? What's going to change?
Hair. I did the hair in prep. No. I don't know. I'm gonna do some more painting myself, I guess. Oh no, there's the big thing.
Yeah, the lies we tell ourselves on New Year's, hey?
I know, right?
The New Year's resolutions we've already broken.
I was about to say I'm gonna go and game physically again, but I'm starting to believe that might not be true anymore either.
Yeah, that's not in our hands. That's
No.
nothing that we can control. So
Um.
let's see what happens.
All right then. So.
Hello to everyone already in the chat. Hello, Carl.
Hello, Carl. So yeah, it's been a pretty quiet week really. Nothing much has happened. Obviously with New Year's and everything, there's not been any releases. I don't think we were expecting anything really. Simon probably on holiday. Let's put it like that. Yeah, it's been pretty quiet. Nothing much to talk about really. But there is of course the game modes, which is what we're going to talk about later today.
Don't let us forget like last week. No,
yeah.
Don't let us get segued.
Totally segued.
Are we gonna see Greyjoys tomorrow? Are we gonna see Greyjoy NCUs? That's the question. Are we back? Are we back on Tuesday Greyjoy reveals or not?
I don't know.
That's the question on my mind.
You can't.
Because if not, well, I mean, either way around, I'm gonna put Greyjoys onto the builder on Wednesday. I'm sort of holding off because I hope. I mean, I thought that they'd already be out by now. I hoped that we would see Greyjoy NCUs by now.
Yeah.
I told people that Greyjoys would be usable come the World Cup. Starts on Friday. Well, lists are locked on Friday, so I'm gonna have to put them up. People aren't gonna have loads of time to do anything with that kind of stuff, but they'll be there on Wednesday. If that's my semi promise to you, unless something happens. I'll put them up when I can, but. Yeah, will we see NCUs? If not, it's going to be a pretty sad list of possibilities for them. It's going to be like their selection of like 4 units, their 3 commanders, and just neutral NCUs. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. We will have to see. I'm not 100% sure that they are actually going to get released. Of course. There is the eternal issue going into kind of like release schedules and talking about like marketing now. If you look at the marketing strategy they've adopted here, releasing information quite early. If you think about what they've got left to talk about, they've got for Greyjoys, just taking Greyjoys, you've got the Hero Box 1 content, which you could probably do 2 articles there. I don't think you'd want to break that down into 1 article, because I think you'd want to focus on each commander, and then maybe it's like, here's 1 or 2 commanders, here's maybe attachment variations of them. So maybe 2 articles there, and then the Trappers, which are the only unit we currently know nothing about. So at a push, I see 3...
So we can see Trappers.
I see 3 articles, though,
You can see NCUs.
Yeah. NCUs, Trappers,
yeah.
and maybe 2 on the Hero Boxes / NCUs in there as well. So 3 to 4 articles.
Yeah.
3 to 4 articles could last the most of January. You're talking this week, next week, well, X number of weeks after that, 4 weeks. That would take us to, end of January, early February. Could we see the Greyjoy release early February? That is Q1, like they were suggesting. If that's what they're going for, I know you're shrugging there. If that's what they're aiming for, if that's the schedule,
what? We're into Simon trademark soon, right?
Yeah.
That's where we are. We're trademark soon. We're Q1. Does your local store know when it's coming out? No, they don't. Does Asmodee know when it's coming out? Maybe they do, but I don't think they're telling anybody.
Probably not.
I've heard nothing. That's actually it's probably as close as we've gotten for a long time.
Mhm.
as in they've been better more recently at giving more advanced, rough information about when something's coming out. We're now in quarter 1, and I have no idea when Greyjoys are supposed to arrive.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, like it's murky. It's murky.
I'm guessing
Let's see.
at
Let's see
this
what happens.
point, for the marketing strategy to work, of course, it's assuming they start again this week. It would be February. Um, they could delay it till mid-February to late February even, and you'd still ride that hype a little bit. If they leave it another couple of weeks between any adjustment, any more articles between now and then, I think you'll lose a lot of hype. That's already prominent in the um, discussions that I've seen on Discord and other places where the hype's already kind of died a little bit for a lot of the stuff. It's more just like
Yeah, I
waiting
mean,
now.
like, people are starting to go quiet on it again.
Mhm.
Like, and yes, I mean that did actually happen this week,
Yes,
Mickey.
it did. It did. I forgot.
The leaked names, which definitely looked translated, so they weren't natural English names. It definitely looked like there was some translation there. So who got them and what language they were translated from, I'm not entirely sure, but
Hmm.
yeah, they were interesting. They definitely looked like they could be real. Like
So
that's tough. It's tough to say whether or not that really is real.
I'm just gonna hide your face just quickly while I move this about. Here we go. Um, this is awfully, awfully, awfully rubbish because the quality's so small. But just so you guys can see there, we've got Stark, Karstark, Spearman. Um, we've got Lannister, Clegane, Brigands. We've got Knights, Watch, Ranger, Vanguard. We've got the Free Folk, Frozen Shore, Chariots. The Targ Heroes 2, Baratheon, Thorn, Watch, and the Greyjoy, Silenced Men. Um, these are obviously all of the different things we've got coming now. I will add, quite importantly here, we have no concept around when these things are coming out. Like, just seeing them
No
go up
idea.
on a pre-order
No
site
idea.
is literally not that relevant because if people aren't aware, Night's Watch Hero Box 2 has been up on some pre-order sites for literally forever. Like, it's the best part of 2 years now.
But yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's 2018. Gen Con 2018 was the first time it was ever seen, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that just seeing things come up on a pre-order site doesn't really mean much. Um, now,
It's interesting though.
it is.
That's the kind of like promotional material some companies put out like
Hmm.
6 months to a year in advance. Like
Yes.
no information other than here's its name and maybe a little picture of what it looks like or something
Hmm.
like that. That's the kind of thing that some do. And it's interesting that that gets people excited, right? People are excited for these units already.
Hmm.
And it tells you why people love information so much from CMON. But yeah, they're there. I think that they all look realistic, but I also think that, if I wanted to, I could put together a realistic list that was entirely different and spread it around the internet, and people might say, "Oh my God, these are coming out."
Yeah.
Like, massive, massive, massive grain of salt. Massive grain of salt could be real.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. Like, they're obviously, like, for me, everything except the Spearman from the Karstark, and I think that's pretty much it, actually. Yeah, they're the only unit that, for me, weren't the standout unit, and I know that people have been asking for Karstarks and other factions of Starks a couple of times on Facebook, Reddit, that kind of thing. So they were the only one there that I didn't expect. Clegane
Mm-hmm.
Brigands, it was like something that people were expecting after seeing the Clegane Butcher in the attachment box. It was
Yeah,
kind of like, is there a
yeah.
Clegane Cavalry unit coming out or a Clegane unit coming out? That seems to back that up. The Night's Watch Ranger Vanguard should be a surprise to literally nobody after we saw the Ranger, what's his face, come out. The
Veteran?
the guy who looks like an
Hardened
assassin,
veteran.
the hardened veteran. There you go.
Yeah, yeah. Hardened
Something like that. Maybe he's finding another place for that unit. The Frozen Shore Chariots. This is something that's been talked about a long time ago. People weren't aware, but someone was meant. I was talking with Batman and a couple of the other guys in the Free Folk channel, Hard Home, that Frozen Shore chariots would be a thing because the Frozen Shore is a massive part of the Free Folk lore. And if you
Yeah.
actually look at the Free Folk rulebook, they've already got the concept art. It's literally in the Free Folk rulebook, the artwork there of the chariot. And you can go on Facebook and find that. I'm sure you can go on various different places and find it. And I'm pretty convinced you could even use that as the box art as is. So if people aren't aware, it's like a dog sled or a wolf sled, effectively.
Yeah.
We then got Targs Hero 2, which probably is a surprise to literally 0 people. I think the biggest surprise of this is that this definitely confirms that Mother of Dragons isn't just Targ Heroes 2, which is in itself.
Wait, I thought Veterans was.
No, that's attachment box, right? That's attachment box 1. So yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, it's a bit awkward, isn't it? So yeah, the Targ Zero 2's kind of confirmed that. There's lots of people talking about like things like Quaith and things like that. Is it Quaith I'm thinking of? The random woman that Danny knows.
Carth?
No, Carth is a place.
Oh, sorry.
Is it Quaith? I think it's Quaith or something like that.
You lost me now. Yeah. Who would actually appear in Targ Heroes?
Yeah, exactly. Something like that, and then there are probably more as well. It
depends. Presumably, we're capped by book progress and not by TV progress. So
it depends.
Things are different. There's a disparity there.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're all realistic.
Thornwatch is exactly what we thought.
Is weird. The more you say it, those Karstark Spearmen are weird.
Yep.
Like, is there a Karstark attachment?
No.
There wasn't, right?
There is nothing currently aligned to Karstarks.
So,
there's Umber. We've seen Mormont, the Mormont veteran, and we've heard about the Mormont she-bears. We've heard about... What else have we got? We've also got Reed, and we've got arguably Tully in the Starks. Those are all the current mini factions, if you will.
You mean you got the Crannogman Survivalist, who indicate that maybe another Crannogman unit exists. You got the Mormont veteran, who indicates that presumably maybe a Mormont unit will come.
Which is the Mormont she-bears, right? They've announced the Mormont she-bears, so that makes sense.
But we don't have a Karstark attachment indicating the existence of a Karstark unit, so it's a bit of a surprise, to be honest. But yeah, very interesting. Yep. See what comes along. See what's real.
Of course, yeah.
Believe it when
you see the models.
Believe it when more people. Yeah, believe it when Simon say it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
It is interesting because this
the real question is.
Yeah. Go on.
Well, talking over each other all the time now.
I know.
The real question is we've got these Greyjoys. We don't know when they're coming. Mm-hmm. But what we also have is we have a not officially released Dragons and Mammoths. Like, when are they coming? Mm-hmm. That's the real thing that's sort of at the moment. And people aren't sure what to do with it. Some people are desperately hoping that they never get released. Some people are desperate to get their hands on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm not going to go delving into what that means or what it could mean or anything like that, because there's a whole lot of discussion around what on earth does all of that mean? What is that in terms of release schedule, and are they actually fixed for the new game mode? All that kind of thing. But yeah, so we'll see. We will see what happens with Dragons and Mammoths. I know that we got lucky. We imported some, didn't we? And so we have had access to them, and as some other people have done, because in some places in the world they have been released. They are actually on sale. So it's just a case of knowing where to buy them and looking far-fangled places. For us, was it? We were looking in the Far East, weren't we? In places like Asia and things like that, where we found shops where they're on sale. So the point is that these things have got street dates for some stuff. For other stuff, it's just not the case. We haven't heard any date as to when they should be released. I'd be interested to see what happens with that.
I'll be interested.
February, March, I think. That's the rumor.
I've been asked by people. I've been told by people that Dragons and Mammoths shouldn't be in the World Cup because they believe, people believe, and honestly, I don't really have a strong opinion on it. People believe that they've been delayed because Simon are actually trying to retcon their rules.
Yeah.
And that's why I shouldn't be using them in the World Cup, because obviously we're on TTS, so there's no distribution issue. Do you know what I mean? People have them. We have their rules. We know what they are. They're in the War Council, or
They're in War
they're
Council.
in people's hands. They have final rules. They're on TTS. There's no reason why in a level playing field of TTS they shouldn't be included, except that people out there believe that that like they were supposed to be delayed, not because they couldn't be distributed, which is the official line. The official line is that they're supposed to be simultaneously released in all areas or whatever, and some areas didn't have them or something like that, something weird. But some people believe that it's because they aren't fair, and that they've decided to retcon them. Actually, that's why their release has been delayed. But if that's true, then Simon have to be honest about that and say, and okay, I mean, you're on Warroom saying that they're balanced for a new meta, right? Okay, but everything that's been released recently is all designed for a new meta. That's like saying that Greyjoys aren't playable because they're for a new meta.
So, in case anyone's wondering in chat what Euron's talking about there, Michael asked a question in the secret room that you get to when you reach level, is it 15? I can't remember, 30, 25. Can't remember. Anyway,
Mickey's so pop past it, he doesn't care.
Yeah, I just don't remember. I genuinely don't remember. Anyway, in the main Discord, Michael said he would answer one question that anyone had. Van asked, will dragons be getting balanced for 1.7, or are they remaining the same, basically? And Michael admitted they will be getting a reduction in power. They will be rebalanced for 1.7. So they are being rebalanced for 1.7.
Okay. But so's everything.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, exactly.
Everything's getting reduced in damage. So that doesn't say, oh no, this has to be changed for this isn't made for 1.6. No, you made it for 1.6 and you're changing it already for 1.7, just like you're changing everything else.
Yeah.
You didn't. If you're telling me they're going to change in 1.7, then actually what you're specifically telling me is that wasn't balanced for 1.7. It was balanced for 1.6.
Now, I'm on the bartender's thing here. I would heavily disagree that they've held it back because of balance issues, because that would be the first time they've ever done it, and it wouldn't fit with the narrative. Why would you hold something back for balance issues and then show everyone what it did anyway? Everyone knew. It wasn't they got leaked necessarily. I know that the dragons got shown by the French community, but actually, in the end of the day, they played a game, and that was on a Simon official channel that game was played, and the rules were shown in a very official way. So even if we didn't have access to them for tabletop, let's face it, who on earth's playing tabletop right now? Very few people. So in the end of the day, they released those things knowing that they were okay for the community to know about. They've been held back for distribution issues, I believe, rather than for retconning rules. And then if they have turned up and said, we're actually retconning the rules, we didn't mean to release them in a broken state, then why didn't you just tell us that when you actually went to release them? We said, guys, we screwed up. Actually, they were too strong. We've had to hold them back because we need to rebalance them. Be truthful with us, rather than saying, oh, Asmodee said we should hold them back. Because that's what it came out as.
Exactly. They've never done that before.
No.
Number two, they never cared that much about game balance before.
No.
So I can't believe that they are doing it now. I mean, considering this will be costing them significant money. Do you know what I mean? They won't be throwing this money away, for the sake of some balance, which they've fucked up. So for me, people who believe that are just they're convinced that Simon couldn't possibly have made that much of a mistake with game balance. They're trying to convince themselves that Simon are covering up a thing that they have now realized they've done. But I don't believe that Simon are doing that. They're almost oblivious to that or don't care about that. Do you know what I mean? Is what my response would be. It's not stop coming up with conspiracy theories about why this thing's been delayed. No. Like, the answers that you've got are things that they don't care about. They don't care about that enough to let it cost them money, to let a release get delayed and distracted when everyone matters to them. You know what I mean? Like, that's they don't address game balance when it doesn't cost them money. So why would they address game balance when it does cost them money?
Yeah,
that's not why this was delayed.
It's definitely a distribution issue. Looking from the outside, without knowing anything else, it has to be a distribution issue because, as we've said before, why pull those when they've just released the attachment boxes? Half of them going to be changed? In fact, some of them have just been changed. Guard captains have just been changed. So it doesn't make sense to release only half of what they had planned. Slightly more than half, I'll give them their due. But it doesn't make sense to release some stuff and not release others. So yeah, it's a distribution thing, and and that's a problem in itself. But that's not something we can ever really have a go at the designers for, because that's, in the end of the day, that is a distribution issue from CMON that has been ripe since day one. Look at Night's Watch.
And anyway, TTS distribution doesn't matter. We've got the rules, and distribution doesn't matter, so we get to play with them.
Exactly, just like we were saying before.
It's a whole different problem if you don't like them. It's a whole different problem if you don't like them and don't want to play against them. That's
all right.
Okay, just to answer some questions, like, okay, yeah, all right, they care about game balance. Yes, I'm not saying they don't care. What I'm saying is they're not going to delay a release and cost themselves significant money for game balance when, they've shown that even when it would be free through the app for them to update game balance, it's not top of the priority list, right? So they're not going to lose money over it. And I don't think that they released. Yeah, exactly, Bartender. Do I think they thought that they were releasing something completely broken? No. Which then means it's slightly worse, which is they don't understand how broken they are.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's that. I mean, I'm not going to go into that rabbit hole of understanding why they're so strong or why they're broken. But yeah, it is certainly something that we need to, I think, park the bus for the moment, because there's nothing much we can talk about anymore regarding it. You know what I mean? It's just It is what it is.
But anyway, who knows when they'll be out? We haven't heard any indications. There's no kind of news. The only news was that Asmodee can't distribute them, so they're not officially released or whatever. It would matter a ton were it not for the fact that COVID stops all physical tournaments.
Yes.
Or all major tournaments. And so, like, it's not an issue that most people have to deal with, and TTS also doesn't have to deal with it in terms of distribution. It only has to deal with it in terms of whether or not people are happy about them being included.
Greg just said an interesting point there. It never surprises him when he sees how bad game designers are at their own games. Yes, so I think there's two big disconnects here. Expecting someone who designed a game to be very good at it, I think, is unfair, because just because you understand the mechanics doesn't necessarily... Well, there's actually my second point. But just because you should understand the mechanics doesn't necessarily mean you can be good at using them. It's theory versus practice, right? You can have the best coaches in the world are actually terrible footballers, as an example. They can coach football to a really high level, but they can't play football at all because they've got no practical skill, but they understand the theory. That's what game designers are. They're very good theorists. They understand how the game functions and how it should work. Or at least, point number two, they should. They should understand the game. They should understand the balance. They should understand the relative powers of various different pieces, and they should understand the mechanics. That is the bit, for me, that surprises me, in that being bad at something that you created is... That's not that big a deal for me. What surprises me is that they don't necessarily understand the mechanics of their own game. That's the bit
I would
that
say
gets me.
I would say competitive players will always. The point is the best competitive players will always be better at the game than the game designers are.
Sure.
That's not like, and that's not saying anything about
It's not.
any specific set of game designers. That's
No.
nothing to say anything about Michael and Fabio or anyone, right?
Yeah.
It's a fact of life. Unless, to be honest, most people who are very good at a game couldn't design an enjoyable game.
No.
Because all they see is exploits, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I look at a game, when I look at a rule set, when I look at units and I evaluate them, I basically ask myself, is there something here that I can exploit to gain an advantage over my opponent? If no, then move on to the next unit, right? Like, and I'm basically looking for combinations and ways to exploit the game, right? Yeah. When you look at it in that way, game design actually becomes very unfun and you are unable to design an enjoyable game.
Yes.
The thing is that you would hope that the game designers would be heavily influenced by and would take a lot of testing and information from players who are able to do that, right? You don't have to redesign like how fun the game is, what its core mechanics are, but you have to take their feedback. If they turn around and say to you, I found a big exploit with this, being mostly, a very easy example of that is Mother of Dragons. You think they work this way, but I understand that I can exploit them in terms of positioning and movement, such as what you think is their weakness, which is that they should die very easily. I can completely negate it by having very good positional play.
Yep.
And they think, but that's not fun, right? They think, why would you put them on the table and play that way or whatever? And I'm just like, well, I just see them and I see that. I see 3 solos and I see a position that I can deny charges with. Mm-hmm. I can see all these things that I'm just like, that's how I win. And so you can't expect game designers to be like that, but you can hope and expect, and any good game designer will take strong and high levels of feedback from players who are able to do that.
Yes.
I think that they don't take enough feedback. It's very well known that Michael isn't as open to feedback and kind of like open discussion around these things as I think he should be, as I personally think he should be. Mm-hmm. A product is limited if it's only one person's vision and one person's idea. It's limited to how good that player is.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. It is definitely interesting. But I think my biggest concern is the understanding of the mechanics. And this is a disconnect between what designers do and what designers see versus what they're actually doing. And I've always been big in this. If you write something, when you read it back, you don't read it back with the idea of what it should say in your head. Read it back with what it says, right? Mm-hmm. And if it says something else, if there's a possibility to interpret that a different way, then you need to come back and you have to look at that again. And yes, you could argue, but you interpreted the word side wrong, and or flank wrong. Well, in the end of the day, there is certain things that you can't prevent. People not knowing the language is a different thing entirely. But if you have the option for people who are not deliberately trying to misconstrue something, but people genuinely not understanding something, then I'm sorry, you need to write it better. And this was classic when we saw them play with the Ride by Attack, right? What he did was just not at all what the card says. And that, for me, means he doesn't understand his own mechanics in what he's writing. Because what he's written and what he's played are 2 very different things. And he's just going, but this is what I think it means. So if you think it means that, you're immediately wrong. Because you are thinking rather than just reading. I've always been an opinion, the thought process of a game should be in the playing of the game, not in the understanding of the rules. You don't have to think to understand rules. That's just a machine doesn't do any thinking. Machine can just follow rules, boom, 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 done. We shouldn't need to think to be able to understand them, because they shouldn't be written in a way which means we have to think, really.
Song is generally quite clean.
It is hugely clean.
We obsess over Song. We're only talking about Song of high here. Like, we're not comparing it to other games, but there are things that could be cleaner,
Yes.
better, sharper, less open to interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say 1.7. They have tried to tackle some of those things.
Yep.
I think we've moved cleaner. We've got a step less interpretive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where there's still new things there, and I think that every time they release new rules, they seem much less clean than their old rules, and then they have to go back and clean them up. That's what it feels like. It feels like they're unable to produce new things that are clean. They have to produce them, have them be messy, murky, open to interpretation, and then only once they've realized that people don't understand that wording do they come back and like rewrite it in the way that they should have written it the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some big standouts for me there, where it's just something's just not written how they wanted it to be, and they've had to come back and change it.
Yeah.
I just wish they used FAQs and erratas properly.
Targs and Brathians seem to be more and more full of them than older factions. Maybe it's a sign of the game becoming more complex, or them trying to add more complexity to triggers, more complexity to interactions, but like that adds more difficulty to the wording. Or it's just that maybe they proofread it less now than they used to once upon a time.
Yeah, QA is a thing, right? Quality assurance is a thing, and people don't necessarily always put it as a very high priority. Some people put it very highly, and it still gets past them. So I mean, what can we say?
Let's talk about game modes. Let's talk about
Here we
game
go.
modes, because
this is why I brought
we
them
tried. I think we're about 2 hours and counting on this week and last week, from which we've tried to start talking about game modes and just been distracted by other rambling bullshit.
Yeah. All right, game modes then. I have had the opportunity to play Game of Thrones. I played this one. I played it in the Greyjoy Mirror, and before we look at the rules, my immediate reaction to the game mode was, that was a hell of a lot better. From both myself and my opponent, Stannis 1000th Lord Commander, we both played the game and we both enjoyed the game. Even though there was winners and losers, there were problems with how the mechanics of the game worked at points. Charging multiple enemies, guys, it's just a nightmare. The actual game mode itself was good. It just straight up was good. So, let's have a look.
Gru says I'm wrong about here we stand in DW, dog wins, dog words. Sure. I'll be more than I'll happily be wrong about them. I'm pretty sure he's saying I'm wrong in my assessment when I said that they're the worst ones. What do you think of the game modes as a whole?
I've only looked through them. I've not played many of them yet. I've only played one or two.
I've played none.
Yeah, exactly.
I've played none.
My immediate opinion, like honestly, my immediate opinion has got nothing to do with the game modes themselves. I actually don't think the game modes have necessarily gotten better. Come on to that in a second. But they've fixed a glaring problem that if you've been attending Tourney Ground since day one, you will know that I mentioned this time and time again. Carlo's mentioned it time and time again. They fixed these goddamn mission cards. And they fixed the objective cards.
Both look but they're the huge standout change. They look way better, way more standardized. Tournament players will love it, or maybe they'll hate it, because actually they'll realize that maybe eventually they'll realize that the reason why they were losing wasn't because of those random missions and because my opponent got certain objective on their side of the board. Maybe they'll realize that they were losing because actually their opponent should be better than them. But point is that in general, tournament players will like them a lot more because there's much less variance in the game mode. The game mode has much less. A table can't be set up in a way where one side has a massive advantage over the other based on who wins the role to pick sides, for example. So, you know, like, I think that's a big improvement in terms of tournament play. In terms of players who are looking for a really equal, balanced game, you know, like, casual players may not have even noticed or cared that it existed. They don't play often enough, and they don't analyze the reasons why they won or lost, or think deeply enough about those things to become annoyed by them. But lots of people were very, very annoyed by the missions. If a certain mission came up, they felt like they just couldn't win the game. And also, lots of people used to really, really care about the mute NCU, for example, and stuff like that on the objectives. That they're all way more standardized, less impactful, but more equally weighted means that you can't really think that that's the reason why you won or lost.
Yeah.
Following on from that, we see that we no longer place the objectives on the table now. They're always in fixed positions, and they're always symmetrically even, which again means that we can't stack one side of the table versus the other. That's, our segue into Game of Thrones there for us.
Yes, there you go. Now, there are some side problems, right? There are some side problems. Something that me and Carlo have discussed at times, and this was actually a strategy that we adopted in the TSL, right? For Stannis, particularly playing Baratheons, we were giving him advice that was basically, if you go into an even game against some factions, you won't win. It's as simple as that. The balance isn't there, you won't win. So what you need to do is stack the game so heavily in one person's favour that if you lose the dice roll, well, you've lost anyway, you're going to lose probably anyway, so it doesn't matter. And if you win the dice roll, it becomes a fair game that you probably will more likely win. So you play the gambit. If people aren't sure what gambits are, go check out chess. Chess gambits happen all the time. You give someone something in the hope that you can benefit more from that. This doesn't really rely on gambits anymore. You can't gambit in the same way. Now, from a competitive player standpoint, that's a good thing. It lends itself to a much better competitive tournament, competitive game mode, competitive scenario. There's a lot more balance in the scenario itself at a very core mechanic level. But if the factions aren't balanced at all, then the game mode immediately stops being fun, because the faction imbalances, there's no way to negate the faction imbalance.
Yeah, I do think that the placement of tokens in old Game of Thrones and stuff like that was an incredibly skillful part of the game. So I am in some ways sad to see it go. We've basically said this skillful aspect of the game has to be removed because some people were very, very good at exploiting it and others were bad at it. And therefore, it was letting good players beat bad players more reliably. And that's like, well, that's just another way that people prove that they're the better player at the table, right? Like, the more we standardize it, the more it becomes, the really far extreme is that we both have to play exactly the same army. Everything is identical. Everything is symmetrical, and we just rely on luck. Somewhere at the other end of the extreme is that this game is so complex that only people like the better player wins 100% of the time. There's no luck involved, and the game exists somewhere in that spectrum. I believe it exists relatively heavily on the skill-based end of things, not particularly luck-based. But every time we remove player choice, a way that they can control the game, and move it more into symmetrical mirror matchups, things like that, it moves closer to being luck-based.
Yes.
Which I think is a bad step. But I don't necessarily have a problem with this X configuration, with it being relatively mirror and even. But as Mickey's discussing, like, I would say that one of my best aspects as a competitive player is being able to analyze the game, the matchup, what's about to happen, and think of ways outside the box, such as stacking objectives on one side, stacking objectives on one flank. Thinking of those ways to give me a chance to win a game mode, which I think that I otherwise I'm generally playing into a bad matchup. And so I'm sad to see it go.
Well, I mean, I always bring back it's a different case entirely because it was Free Crows, not Game of Thrones. But I played against Psychopath, Free Folk mirror matchup, and I placed some stakes basically on the edge of my own deployment to sacrifice a unit to generate the second corpse pile. And the reason I did that was because if I put the two armies up, we had basically the same activations. He had a lot more bears, and it was Feast of Crows. It's all about dropping panic tokens. So in the end of the day, what I saw was if I approach him, he will probably just kill me faster than I can kill him, because he simply does more damage.
Yeah.
So what's the best way to play this game? Not fight him. I'd rather lose my own unit, kill off my own unit, because that is a strategically better option than going into a straight-on fight with him. I played the Gambit. It won. Simple as that.
Exactly. It's similar to in-game kind of out-of-the-box plays that some people have made, such as like charging their wolves through stakes to activate North Remembers. Like these kind of things, they're really odd strategies, but sometimes if you're up against it, it's the best way forward. It's the best thing that you can do. And it's gone. So we won't labor the point. But I don't have a problem with the X. I think that we've lost one aspect of player agency there, which means, like you say, we're more heavily into list design being core, list balance being core to who wins the game. Less control to find ways to fight an uphill battle.
Definitely. Now, if anyone is interested on like all the kind of concepts and things that I've been going down the route of, I have been watching a hell of a lot of chess over Christmas, and the Airthing Masters just finished a couple of days ago. Go and check out Daniel Dubov versus Magnus Carlsen, and just Daniel Dubov's games in general, because he plays this very risky style of chess that's completely like you're making bad moves, but he's making bad moves because they're actually good. It's just people don't make them, and it's about understanding that if you play away from what people normally think is good, you can throw the spanner in the works and get wins when you shouldn't get wins. Or, if it doesn't work, you get losses where you shouldn't get losses. So, Game of Thrones, though. Fine. There is something we didn't talk about. All objectives worth 1, commander +1 for controlling their objective. This is a general theme you'll see through a lot of the game modes, favouring on-field commanders ever so slightly. It's not a huge favour, but it is a boon.
I mean, it's big enough.
Yeah.
It's about as much as they can give, right? Like,
yeah.
I do think it's a trap. It's a trap, right?
Yeah.
People see that. Honestly, a long time ago, I used to see that, and I used to think, gotta play an on-field commander then. That's brilliant. Couldn't not play an on-field commander into this game mode. But actually, it matters more whether or not your on-field commander has a good pairing into that matchup. If your NCU commander is good into your opponent, it will massively outweigh that 1 VP a turn, which is actually probably only going to be 1 VP in turn 2, or, you know what I mean? Because from then on, like, it matters way more about how well you're doing in the battle. You're going to get 3 VP on, like, turn 2 when your commander's unengaged, but it's unlikely that it will last any more than that, and it will be far more important that you're winning in a general sense than scoring that 1 VP.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I actually think there's another aspect to this as well, in that it is a little bit of a debate, but it's a time pressure thing, and it comes back down to actually the deployment zones. 10-inch deployment zones moving up from the standard 6. This is absolutely huge. I know you talked about it in your video, Carlo, but this is actually way bigger than people recognize. The 4-inch march now going to 8 inches with the pivot will allow basically any what we refer to as defensive unit to control one of your own side tokens in the 5 in the first turn. You can get there and establish your footing on it on the first turn. Nothing realistically is going to beat you there. So, why is this a big deal? Why is this a problem?
And also, realistically, you can almost any unit with any movement can pressure your opponent's near side objective.
Yes.
For a turn charge 2, right?
Yeah.
This means that slow units can get to claim turn 1, and like you don't have to be movement 6 anymore and just running absolutely hell for leather with the maneuver zone to like pressure a backfield objective turn 2. Yeah. That means that objectives aren't safe anymore. We're so far deployed and they're clustered in the center. We can't like put them down in the corners the way people used to do to like just put their dog on it. we're in a way more like the game mode in general. All game modes in general just look to matter so much more. How much control over the table do you have? How much are you winning the fight in general? Not that positional play doesn't matter, controlling objectives doesn't matter, but like there's looks to be a lot less standoff, a
Yes.
lot less non-engagement, and a lot more of are you winning the fight?
And this comes back onto kind of like my double-edged sword side of it. In 1.6, I don't know how that focuses on different factions. I don't really know how that balances, because ultimately it comes down to the factions that fight the best. I think it further pushes them into the next level. Yes, you could say it disenfranchises wolves and things, but let's face it, you don't need wolves to control objectives to win as Starks. It was always a extra boon.
Wolves are always great in Fire and Blood.
Yeah.
Wolves are an amazing Fire and Blood unit anyway. Like they're great at fighting.
Yeah, exactly. So all of these concepts and these ideas that they give you benefits here, benefits there, I still don't think it plays around from those things. And 1.7, from what I've seen, lends, because everything's less killy, to more defensive pieces. So it ends up being, and this is kind of like where I'm a little bit worried, who can grind out who the best? And if you can't grind each other out, well, in theory, Baratheons. But actually, if you in 1.6, if you can't grind each other out, it's who kills who fastest the best, which goes back to the old problem we had. It doesn't solve the problems we saw in 1.7. 1.6. It exacerbates 1.6 and introduces this problem in 1.7 that I can already see starting to occur. That's obviously naysaying a little bit. That's not necessarily always true, but it means that this kind of like grindiness that I feel is going to happen. I think, everyone already hated budging Rose Knights off objectives. Now there's going to be 2 units of Rose Knights on objectives every game, and there's nothing you can do to stop it, realistically.
Yeah, I think the version's not called 1.7.
Yeah,
True.
It's not
true.
called 1.7. 2021.
2021, Mickey.
It is
whatever
called.
that means.
I keep calling it 1.7. 2021. Same thing.
And Charles says he ain't seeing the he ain't seeing 1.7 2021 2021.7. He ain't seeing it being less killy yet. And I have to agree, like, we are talking about raw stat attack damage going down and morale as a rule going down, but we're also seeing a ton of additional rules that see other ways to push through damage. I don't necessarily think that we're gonna become a way less killy game. Like,
no,
I think you're just gonna be more specialized in the way you do it. Like, It's not gonna be just generally everybody does some damage and then some panic damage. It's just gonna be some people just absolutely butcher people and then do a tiny bit of panic damage, and some people do some wounds and then absolutely monumental panic damage. Just like, you're just gonna separate people, and then you'll have some that are amalgamation in the middle. And if you don't do either of those things, you're just gonna not do damage.
yeah, basically. That's a discussion for another day, though. The only other change we saw here is it's not really a change so much, but they've gone down the ranks. If you're in combat with someone with more ranks than somebody, you stop controlling it, like we saw in the older game modes. The reason I mention this is solos are counted as having remaining ranks equal to the remaining wounds for both control and contest. So that is a standard now across the board for Game of Thrones. This isn't a change from the old version, I believe, but it does lend itself to having these high wound solos. 8 wound solos now, effectively 8 ranks. They exist in the game now.
Dragons and giants and mammoths, as much as they're not brilliant objective holders, they are brilliant objective deniers. So that has always been the case. People haven't massively used it. Like, it's never mattered. I would say that's really that's not why people field them. They consider them too expensive, but it's a nice aside to have in those units. We'll see what things lie. Like, dragons are powerful, so it's hard to talk about them in their fairness with other things.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next game mode, Carlo, winners and losers of the new Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones being played in 1.6. In 1.6, so World Cup predictions here. What's going to be a winning faction here?
It's less exploitative in terms of wolves, with objective tokens being right in the corners, being played in a entirely non-combative way. Like I went through a whole exercise where I practically proved that the majority of Baratheon builds, the normal Renly side Baratheon builds, slow Baratheons, if played properly into Starks, literally couldn't win the game without a dice being rolled. Like, you'd already lost in the deployment phase as long as the Stark player knew exactly what they were trying to achieve and how they could deny you the game. I think that that's not true anymore. The Starks are still going to be very powerful at this game mode, but they're not so exploitative at it as they were. Again, for the very, very slow Baratheons, the 10-inch deployment is huge. The fact that you have to fight over stuff is huge. Baratheons are a big winner of it.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say they're competitive. You know, they've moved from unplayable in Game of Thrones into good factions into playable. They haven't moved from playable to competitive yet.
It's a win, though, isn't it? It's a win. It's a win for Baratheon.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say everyone's a winner. There's more interaction. There's more going on. It's less predetermined. I would say that Starks were the ones who were exploiting it to everybody else's, everybody else's detriment, and that part's gone away a bit.
Yeah, definitely. And no turning off NCUs, so I don't have to worry about, as a free folk player, turning off Varys so I can use my own NCUs. Oh wait, hang on, Varys still exists. That's going to be fun.
Objectives, a general thing for the X is objectives are 12 inches apart, the two opposite sides. It makes long range ranged units quite like they can hold and pressure at the same time.
Yeah,
you still got to defend them. You still got to have something there that doesn't just stop them getting cavalry charged. But I think that crossbows, as a general rule, and Stark archers, like the archers out there, Lancer crossbowmen, Night's Watch crossbowmen, Stark bowmen, are all 3 units that do pretty well sitting on that objective while pressuring their opponent who's on the objective.
Yep, completely agree. It's removed in dance. Yeah. So just saying that because NCUs being switched off is no longer in the game, obviously it means that in 1.6 we won't be switching off Boulder or Varys at all. So you'll have to deal with it. Deal with it, boys. All right. So Clash of Kings next. Now this is one that's probably gone under the most significant changes because it's now just not what it used to be. And I say not what it used to be. Clash of Kings, for anyone who doesn't know, Clash of Kings had already been changed quite significantly once already.
Very significant. Remember when it used to be corner deployment?
That one was weird. Corner deployment.
It's always been the most unique game mode, practically, Clash of Kings. They're really trying to do something with it, and they've not found a happy medium. Unless maybe they have now, Clash of Kings was... Some people liked it, but the old one, a lot of people hated it. A lot of people dislike redeploy as a general rule. And a lot of people... There was problems to do with Insignificant. Insignificant was a exploitative method of Clash of Kings, and I actually stop at saying free folk anymore because conscript spam became just as good. It's just the word insignificant was the problem, not just free folk. They're just the biggest users of it, the most common users of it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I remember the days where I used to play CDS. Before CDS were completely changed. I used to play CDS on Clash of Kings, and I used to play them because they were good at what they did, but even then I was turned away from them because I knew that it was giving up VPs. So I went towards more Insig spam before Insig spam was really a thing. I used to play Insig spam on Clash of Kings back in the day where Panic used to kill a unit, because it was just how you played the game mode. And as a free folk player, you needed that back in those days because nothing did damage. Jesus, you just had to push them out. Right. So you take 6 to 10 of the objective cards. I'll show those in a second, and you choose 2. Each player chooses 2. When you activate your commander, you select one of those cards, and you
May,
gain the
May,
effect
because
of
you've
that
only got
card.
2 throughout the game.
Yes, yeah. You may select one of those cards. You gain the effects of that card for the rest of the round. I believe, yeah, that's right, to the end of the round. If your commander has been destroyed, you may redeploy them within a friendly deployment zone or fully within 6 inches of any flank edge at the start of the round. So units will be coming in unactivated. That's the takeaway I get there. Then it's usual controls for the tokens. So tokens are just simple 3 tokens across the middle of the board, nothing special about them whatsoever. You gain 1 for each, 1 for the commander, an extra 1 that every time your commander's unit kills an enemy, and 2 points the first time you kill an enemy commander. Now the straightaway big one here is enemy commanders that give away extra VPs. I'm thinking Joffrey. I am thinking Mother of Dragons. That is, well, Joffrey's unit
5
dies 5 VPs.
5 VP. But he comes back, so it's cool.
He does. But let's say, how hard is it to do 8 wounds? Well, it never used to
Joffrey's,
be.
Joffrey's probably not feeling great about this.
No.
Also, partly because, like, so the 5 different objectives that we can pick from, they're basically going to give us an aggressive keyword, pretty much. He doesn't really need them or want them, I would say.
We get some more for free.
They're not
anyway,
going to massively change his fortunes.
No.
And yet he's got a massive target on his head saying, well, I mean, it says come and burn me, mostly to dragons. Like Joffrey's dead in the water right now, comparatively speaking. Like we're not really mentioned him a lot recently, but you can't play Joffrey into dragons. He's just 3 VPs. He's worse than every other unit rather than better, because all they care about is just how many wounds do you have? How many wounds do you have? Oh, you have less than most everybody else? Then you're just an easier snack. Yeah. Joffrey, MOD, well, MOD's MOD. It's a hard thing to talk about whether or not MOD actually sees any combat or whether or not the dragons just do all the work.
Yeah.
As a game mode in general, I think it's a big improvement. I think people will give it a go. I've included it in the World Cup. I didn't include it because I was like, hey, that's one of the best new game modes. I was like, this one's different to the rest, and I want to see people play it, and I want to see what it does. Like, you know, I haven't had the chance to play it out myself. I don't know specifically who's winning and who's losing from this. I haven't, you know, been like giving it the really deep analysis, but I've looked at it and thought, we should see what happens now. Like, this one is different to how it was, and also different to all the other game modes, significantly enough. We'll even see whether or not people decide to play an on-field commander into it. You know,
it's nice for the redeploy.
Yeah,
leveraging kind of weird activation advantage.
+1 for controlling, +1 for killing, 2 when you die, and you get to redeploy. Where do people's belief on, like, is that good or bad?
Now the issue there, people talking about, you know, giving up the personal VPs, Joffrey giving up his VPs, Mother of Dragons giving his VPs. The +2 for killing the enemy commander is the first time only, so you only get the +2 for killing a commander the first time. The actual personal VPs, I really don't know if that was in the FAQ or the original document, to be honest, with the old Clash of Kings. So I don't know, in honest truth, whether or not Joffrey's 2 victory points for killing him will reapply. They probably won't, because that has been the ruling, not for Clash of Kings. I remember that for redeploying other things as well. Like Here We Stand, the redeploy thing meant they never scored again, so I think a redeploy won't make them rescore those victory points. Otherwise, yeah, Joffrey's just an absolute dead choice here, because that's 5 VPs followed by 3 VPs. Just I can get 8 VPs for killing him twice alone. That's it. Yeah, don't do that.
Dragon bait, trapper bait.
Yeah.
bait, unit bait.
Interesting
Berserker
game.
Bait, everything bait.
Everything bait, yeah. Interesting game. Only respawning commander will speed up game length and strategies surrounding your own unit. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't think Clash of Kings games took very long. Coming from a free vote player, which is probably a ridiculous statement to make. I think people played Clash of Kings in a very slow manner, more so than other game modes. I don't actually necessarily think the game mode took much longer to play. And I go back to game modes when we played at a tournament physically, didn't we, Carlo? I think Clash of Kings was game 1, and it was by far our shortest round. We didn't have these games go to ridiculous lengths because people just won faster. Because people didn't.
Yeah,
People just
I
killed
think
things.
there's a bit of an established meta around Clash of Kings and the way it plays, and people feel like they have to play that way, and therefore they take twice as long on their turns because they're trying to decide whether or not that's right, rather than just taking moves that are natural to them.
Yep.
Rather than just being like, oh, I think this is the best thing to do, they're double thinking and triple thinking everything that they do because they've watched somebody else play Clash of Kings in a certain way and thought, that's really interesting, I'm going to copy that way. And so, yeah, I agree. The redeploy when you get used to it, but it is true that games generally slow down. People take longer to make their decisions as it gets closer to 10 VPs. And if there's still as many units on the board, that can slow your turns down. Things can drag on.
By definition,
when there's
having
only
more
a couple of units left. So.
By definition, having more activations will mean the game is longer. Like, that's just pure definition. But actually, it's about the amount of time that people spend. And yeah, so Charles, people pre-measure literally everything as well, which is in Clash of Kings, to be honest, you don't do because everything's an inch away from everything else. That's how Clash of Kings ends up playing for me.
I find currently in the current 1.6, and I think we'll carry over into 1.7. The slowest game mode is Here We Stand. I think that's the right one. The one where we count up our points in each quarter. I find in reality it's by far the slowest because people spend a long time at the start and in the middle and towards the end of every turn counting up in their head what each unit is in each quarter, what will happen if certain NCUs go into certain places, what happens if certain units move into certain places. It really drags on and becomes just like a load of addition and maths, as opposed to people taking moves that they just look at a move and go, that's a cool move, that's a good move, that's an aggressive move, that'll kill something, I'll do that. It becomes a real set of like managing. It's almost like a spreadsheet manager in the end of how I can push units around and get their correct little corner into or their center line past the thing. So I find that one's super slow. I'm not on board with that one. I know Gruslow came in and said that I'm wrong about it, but I don't like that game mode. Like, they really did a job on it when they made it, when they changed it from its beta incarnation.
I'm just gonna mention actually while he's probably no doubt still listening. Bartender, would it be that hard to create a point counter? Probably, because the points aren't inherent to the units yet. So you'd have to way of having units in TTS would have to have points attached to them, and then you would be able to count up the number of points in each quadrant. But that could be something we look at, in that you actually assign points values to units now, and obviously all the attachments within TTS. Because then what you could do is you could actually have it automatically calculate on TTS, admittedly.
At all times, it could just be showing what
immediately calculate exactly for each player in each quadrant. And that would be.
I'm pretty sure the Song of Ice and Fire stats export has the unit cost in, and if not, it has it saved, so it could be added. But the
stats file, the JSON, I think does. Or the pull down does.
Exactly. I forget what we exactly agreed, but anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a totally different thing.
So
Clash of Kings is in. It's in. It's in. We'll find out what people think of it come the end of the event.
Yep.
I still don't know whether or not you should take a commander.
Field. Yeah.
Depends on the matchup, as always. I still think that Howland's the #1 choice if you ever play Starks. I don't give a crap what the game mode is or what you have. If your opponent has dogs, you should have Howland. End of story. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. They've as a general rule, they've given extra VPs to on-field commanders in nearly all game modes. I don't think it counters the fact that Howland specifically is just your best Stark choice in most situations, and I still think that High Sparrow is your best choice for nearly all Lannister games. you know, like that doesn't get beaten down by there being one VP available to you.
Definitely. We also didn't talk about it, but numbers 6 to 10 were the options for controlling the objectives and having these as buffs from your commander's unit. We see Sundering, Vicious, Precision. Defender becomes weakened, which is an odd one. And always use your highest attack die value. There are some things here I don't like. Sundering... Giving a unit Sundering is, I guess, fine. It's like a standard buff, and most decks have done something like that in a card. So I think that's reasonable. Vicious, I don't feel too bad giving a unit Vicious either. Precision.
New Precision.
New Precision. I'm not, even though they've actually changed New Precision Crit Blow, I'm not really a fan of the New Precision. It feels like it's...
He plays dragons. Sorry, because he plays giants.
No, actually, No, it's because it allows panic-based armies to push through wounds. It becomes the new steer, but on luck-based. And it's like...
Okay.
It's I don't like that interaction, because if you attack a unit, like, I mean, example, Reapers versus Ironmakers, you've got a 2+ save with your 2 pillage tokens. I am not killing you whatsoever through your armor, because I haven't got any negatives. But then I have Precision, and I'm like, I rolled 5 6s, so I just killed 5 of you guys through your 2+ armor save, and you're now taking that panic test that I need you to take. Like, I don't like that, because it introduces ridiculous swinginess to dice rolls. I've actually got no problem with it going through, like, giants getting killed by Precision doesn't bother me actually too much. Honestly, no, I honestly doesn't care. I don't care, Bruce. Honestly, don't. It's
don't worry, mate.
Units.
They've got you pegged. They see right through you. They see right through your complaints. They know.
I'm sat here defending Baratheons, and they're like, "Oh, now he's having it because it's giants, giants." And I'm like, "Mate, if you think your 2+ stag knights are going to survive at all in this meta, you're wrong." So, you know, I just think,
I don't know. I've always people have. We'll see what the new value of Precision is.
Yeah.
I think that its stock has gone up.
Mm-hmm.
People always used to discuss, Sundering, Vicious, and Precision as like where they were weighted against each other, and Precision was generally like that's the worst of these.
Yep.
The one that you don't get to have is Crit Blow.
Thank God.
Generally, like Precision, Sundering, and Vicious. Sorry, Crit Blow, Sundering, and Vicious were known as like the holy grail, the trifecta. If you could get those 3 on a unit at the same time, then you're a bit of a big deal around here.
Mm-hmm.
In general, people liked Crit Blow, Sundering the most. Vicious was a secondary to it, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. I love that comment by Greg there. The funniest thing being that if you talk to any Free Folk player, I am probably the one who fields giants the least, because I think they're terrible. So yeah, it's I just think it is funny when people talk about that. But yeah, so 6 okay, 7 probably a bit meh, 8 I think could be very oppressive. Just quick reminder that you could put Khal Drogo in a unit of Zorses and give him Crit Blow Precision. Yeah, that's a thing. Or any unit of neutral cavalry by that chance. Objective 9, this is a weird one, because I feel like if you're playing Vargo Hote in the new incarnation that we see him, this is not just give them a weaken token.
Mm-hmm.
This is...
I think...
Yeah.
In 1.7, from some of the things we've seen, this might just be an absolute god mode
ball buster of a card.
Yeah, like this could just enable certain list build strategies to be the most horrific stuff that ever existed. Mm-hmm. Right now, as it is right now, everyone's gonna go
meh. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Meh.
You know what I mean? Like
Baratheons like it. Baratheons like it. It's basically for Wardens. It's like giving someone a vulnerable token. That's cool.
True.
That's
True.
Cool.
Yeah. It's got its niche uses. It's got its niche uses.
Yeah. And then finally, Objective 10, always rolling its highest attack die value. They've liked this. They've liked this new thing
No.
Go on.
Just for Charles. My heart just went for a moment and my stomach fell out when he said that every long range unit was going to have precision. they all say melee attacks. I had to go and look. So these say melee attacks. You can't gain these abilities on ranged. Otherwise, I was gonna flip one out if I thought that you could just give Sundering Vicious and Precision just to ranged units at will and just sit on objectives and have those things. I was actually gonna have a heart attack. But
Jaqen, for what it's worth,
I don't know
Jaqen's
where you think this precision's coming from.
Jaqen's influence is also melee attacks. So just to worry about that.
Yeah.
All of the stuff we've currently seen that gives precision is on melee only. And I'm very glad at that. If you start giving precision to long range units, that just God, that makes me sad. For various reasons, not for giants and things like that, but just makes me really sad for the game modes in general. No, imagine Awful Night's Watch.
It was for giants.
Awful Night's Watch. I've got a unit of crossbowmen, and if you ever come near me, if you ever charge me with your cavalry, I'll just precision shot you.
Fair enough. Yeah,
there's some real.
I overreacted to Charles' question, which is I thought, God, if these things can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
They are what they are.
They're okay.
Yeah. The last one, very subjective. In general, you don't care about it, but it could be useful to be one of the two that you pick in Clash of Kings. You might care about your commander throwing a highest attack for him to still be dangerous on low ranks, but he's worth +2 points anyway, so it's not like he's going to get ignored when he's on low ranks. It's not like people are going to be like, okay, I've neutered him, leave him alone. If they neuter him, they're going to be like, I want to kill him for the extra VPs.
This feels like one of those kind of is a bit of a gambit. You know, your commander's nearly dead, and it's like, oh, I want to kill a unit quickly with him, because otherwise he's going to die. So I need to kill this unit quickly to not die. And in 1.6, let's be honest, in 1.6, I don't think that many commander units are going to be hanging around the field on more than one rank for very long, because I think units are going to come in and they're going to bulldoze them if they can. So yeah, I think that is an interesting one there. Anyway, let's move on. We've talked about Clash there for a while. We are on to wins, aren't we? I believe.
Huge changes to wins. Huge. Just because the objective deck's changed. Not only that, but actually it's got a drafting system, and two, we're not even. It's not mutually exclusive that we don't have the same cards.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to have the same cards. We both have to have 11 and 12. That's known.
Yep.
And we pick, 4 additional cards. Super interesting. No luck involved.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very, very tournament worthy game, in my opinion.
Hugely. I really like this for one reason, predominantly, and that is you can craft a list designed to have certain missions to be fulfilled. Now, unfortunately, the missions themselves, caveat to that, the missions themselves are less swingy, so it's not as all-encompassing. Oh, I've got a unit in your deployment zone, or I've got Tywin NCU, I just win 4 points. Yeah. It's nothing like that. But it still rewards understanding the concepts of list building and how you're going to generate certain situations within a game. Straight off, we see swords, horses, and swords letters. Enemy NCUs claiming them, gain a victory point. Yeah. You can afford to take a list that doesn't have much tempo on the board, I guess, on the tactics board. I don't like this thing about them saying, trying to disenfranchise 3 NCU meta, or try and disenfranchise the tactics board as being as powerful as it is, because it is. They haven't changed the power level of the tactics board whatsoever. If anything, the only thing that's changed is crowns, which no one cared about anyway. So taking away power from the tactics board is something that even the Greyjoy deck doesn't quite do it really enough. So realistically, I still don't think you'd be willing to take the tempo hit unless you're in this game mode. And in this game mode, it feels like it feels like your players aren't going to just be claiming swords, horses, or letters, because, well, what's the point? I don't get anything from that necessarily. And, it's a bit of a weird one. It's a weird way of controlling tempo. It might work. It really might work, but I don't see it being a thing. Also, this actually matters.
I think that if you play that card, I'm just not going to take those zones. It's as simple as that. You get some denial.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to say, all right, you have 0 VP. But The thing that we're talking about is that actually, I believe that missions are open for both players to score. Right? I haven't actually read super deep into it, but missions are open for
Yes.
both players to score.
Both players
So
can
really,
score
what you're saying is, if you take them, you better really want them.
Yeah, both missions can be scored. What's actually more interesting? There's no indication. Yeah, no, I was just reading, just making sure I got this right. There's no indication that I have to tell you what's in my hand.
No, I don't believe so.
No. So
No. So I know that you have 11 and 12, and you know that I have 11 and 12. But other than that, it's secret what our 4 missions are.
yes, that in itself can be a very strange scenario because you can
But we play them at the start of the round, right?
Yes,
and
we do.
reveal
Yeah,
them.
and reveal them at the start of the round.
The mission
Yeah.
is known.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can imagine it being very strange because you may get situations. Well, and this I know this has come up, but people selecting the same mission and the overlap there, and is it double scored? Is it not double scored? I believe it's double scored because you score both. The conditions of both were fulfilled, therefore you score both. But you'll end up in this weird situation where you slow the game down, I think, in the early turns without necessarily scoring very many points for it.
So, unless I've made a mistake, you still score VPs from doing wound, from killing units.
Yes, I think you do. Yeah, you do.
Now.
You still do.
That part's gone away, and we only play to 10. We're not playing to 12 anymore because of the secret missions. So, in general, there's 2 VPs available from pretty much all of these missions. There are 2 VPs available. 2 of them on the board. There's up to 4 points a turn available from our missions, which is not too dissimilar to most game modes, which have about 4 VPs on the table available to be scored from objectives. So we've brought that into line with how important mission or objective play is versus killing your opponent. That is kind of standardized across the game modes. We'll see what happens. I'm yet to play them. I don't know if it'll be. They're way better. That's it. They're way better.
Yep.
But the other one was so bad. They were so unlike. Winds of Winter, particularly, was so unfavored by tournament players. Like literally, people would refuse to enter tournaments because I said that we were going to play it. That we don't know how much. Like we know that this one's way better. We don't know whether or not that makes it good, or just playable now, or still maybe unplayable, but way better, but still unplayable in some people's opinion. I think that it's playable. I think that the way we choose missions, similar in reverse to when we talked about Game of Thrones, we've added a whole layer of player agency, player skill to it, a way for a player to show that they're more skilled than their opponent, even though they have a bad matchup, create strategies and, out of the box kind of thinking of ways to outplay opponent who wins on paper. And that's all brilliant, and we'll see how it happens in reality. I think that this game mode will massively favor those who do a lot of preparation before the game about what missions they think their opponent will pick, what missions they're going to pick, and how that will play out.
Definitely. Mission 11, I know someone mentioned in chat, Mission 11's just kind of perked my eyes up a little bit there, because you reveal it at the start of the turn, which means that
start of the round or start of the turn?
Start of the round, sorry.
Yeah.
So you can predict this. Because realistically, I'd have thought, most of the time, not always true, you've got to understand game state and a lot of other things. Most of the time, the person who's behind is probably going to select this at the earliest possible opportunity they can. Right?
If they're about to be player 2.
Yes.
Presumably stealing player 1 is one of the biggest things.
Yes, stealing player 1 is, I think, the biggest thing. There's something there which I like a little bit. And this is the big one. Does this completely kind of negate Walder? You would never pick Walder into secret mission game modes. Because even if you steal first player from the next turn, I already know you've stolen first player for next turn, and if I'm behind, boom. Whereas if I'm in the lead,
Oh,
well,
wait, you're talking about new Walder.
yeah,
You're
new
not talking
Walder,
about
yeah,
current
no,
Walder.
new Walder, yeah, just
New Walder.
yeah, 2021 Walder. You're
Oh, I
completely
don't care
negate.
about 2021 Walder.
That's fair enough.
I haven't looked at them
That's
closely
fair
enough.
That's fair enough.
Oh, 21 to Walder just like.
I know, but seeing as that was
I'm
their
not.
main mechanic for getting rid of 3 NCUs,
2021 Walder.
I know.
Yeah. Okay. So that's complicated. What are you saying? You're saying
Walder would claim
I'm
crowns, take first player, but then I know that you're going to be first player next turn, so at the start of the round I reveal this and I come back to first player.
Okay, presuming you're losing though.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
currently losing to Walder.
Yes.
So it's your fault. You're losing to Walder.
Right, but there's the problem. You've just highlighted the fact that like Walder's that bad, is he? You know, it's just a weird mechanic. No, yeah. So this happens at the start, so that the card wins out because the Walder happens at the start of the previous
goes
round.
first. He steals first turn, and then you get it stolen straight back again.
Yeah.
You get
Walder
stolen
goes
straight
at the
back
end
again
of the last
by
turn.
the objective.
Walder activates the end of this turn, then start of the round, I become the first player, then I reveal this card, you become first player again, whatever it is. Yeah. It's a weird one. Anyway, I think that they're in general they're okay. I do think there's elements there that I'm looking at thinking it's going to be snowbally, potentially very snowbally, with the way that the objectives are scored. I don't know if you'd favour the NCU Tactics board 3 in the top corner there. I don't know if you'd bother with them that much. Or
my first reading of it was that I totally missed that we'd both score both people's objectives.
Yeah.
Since I know that now, since I've given it proper read, looked at people's discussions about whether or not you can double score, whether or not you can, what happens in certain interactions. I like the game mode less. I liked it more when it felt like I was in control of my missions. Because don't forget, I got to pick them, right? It doesn't have to be fair. We don't have to both be able to score it because I chose these for a reason.
Yes.
Is kind of like what I would say about it. There's no reason why we both have to be able to score. It largely devalues the ones where you score if you take certain zones of the tactics board because if I played it and it was a denial of that zone to you, but not a denial of the zone to me, then I'd be like, I can use that to real effect. Use it when I think you want to take swords desperately or something like that. Bang! Neither you don't take swords, then I take it. Then you don't take letters, and then I take it. It's like I've had a great NCU round, even though I'm second. But if I play that and that's my intention, then I've just given up 2 VPs to do it. So, I'm actually less super happy about this game mode than I was. I think that when you really look deep into it, we'll have to see what happens. It could also score really, really fast. It could just end round 3, in some cases practically. So
I've got a good one for you. I want a ruling here and now because it's going to come up.
Oh,
I can almost see it happening.
Go.
No, because I'm being devil's advocate. Mission 11. When you reveal this mission, if you have less VPs than your opponent, score 1 VP and become the first player. Okay?
Yeah.
It's turn 6. I'm forced to play a card. I have to play this card, right? Because you play a mission a turn.
Okay, but you've only got 6 missions in your hand, right? Do you play one on round 1, or do you only play them on round 2?
Let's have a look. I didn't actually check that. I should have checked that before I asked the question.
So I think you always have a choice.
Beginning of round 2. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So you always have 2 in your hand.
Yeah, that's fine. But question's still relevant because you might see this happen. I'm winning the game. I'm on 9 VPs. You're on 8. Okay.
Yeah.
I have 2 missions in my hand. Let's say I just pick 11. Don't ask me why I came to that conclusion. Let's just say I played 11. I reveal it. I'm losing.
You go to 9 and steal first player.
No, I'm losing because I'm 9. You're 8. But I played mission 11.
But you score 1 VP for that, right?
No, because I'm not behind. I don't have less VP than my opponent. I've got 9. You've got 8. So I don't score.
Oh, I'm losing.
Yeah, you're losing. But either player can score each other's objectives, right?
When you reveal, I haven't revealed it.
No.
When you reveal.
So it would be me, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. That's my ruling.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
My ruling is that that
Because
you have
obviously
to reveal
all of
that
the other
yourself.
missions say if you destroy the enemy commander, score 2. But of course, you could mean both players in those circumstances. So
Yeah.
whereas you in this case definitely means the singular version of you, whereas all the other versions of you in the rest of the thing mean the plural version of you. Just a little thing. Just be the player that reveals this mission should. Dirty.
Yeah.
It's a little thing there, because I can see that coming out. I can see someone having that exact that question in the World Cup in a couple of weeks' time. So, okay then. That's Winds of Winter. Same 5. Same 5 there. Nothing much to say about the setup there.
This is taking a while, Mickey.
I know. One thing I was going to say, and you'll see this when we look at Dark Winds, Dark Words, we've seen this exact token layout before. Is terrain placement going to... And I know we say it's already standardized because people love weirwoods and people love corpse piles. Is terrain placement going to become so much more standardized because the gap between the two armies is the same and the layout of the tokens is basically the same in 2 or 3 different variants?
Yeah, for exactly the same reason as TTS like showed people how certain lists are the best thing and people copied them and like it proliferated this idea that there's a meta. I think that now that we've standardized all the game modes, standardized where the tokens are, I think we'll start to see an incredibly standardized set of terrain placement for certain armies. Like, to be honest, I already think that there is. Like, pretty much the first person who wins puts, if it's a morale-based game, they put a weirwood or a corpse pile in the center of the map, and the next person picks something 6 inches either side. They pick a side of the board that they want to try and fight on, and then like some like interactions kind of happen from then on. But like, I already think the terrain placement is simultaneously skillful and people just copying each other at the same time.
I mean, I agree with what Charles is saying there. I do think I see it more with free folk players. I do it myself a lot more. I will throw out completely random terrain all the time. Like, I love bogs, forests, been throwing walls out recently. Because I think actually throwing terrain out like that could curveballs people completely.
True.
And people just don't have a clue. They think, oh, it's weirwoods and corpse piles, and it's like, well, actually, it's not the best thing to do. It's just what you de facto think is the best thing to do because of the way you've played the game.
There's a lot to be said to taking the game to a place where you're experienced and they're not. Which is also, you know, like if the meta becomes like this entirely standardized thing, which, you know, people say that it's just a corpse pile versus weirwood meta. People do get incredibly confused and suddenly start to panic and stuff like that when you start throwing out other terrain. You know, like, and they don't necessarily know how to react. They don't know what to do about it, and that is something that you can use to your advantage if you really know how to play in and around a palisade, what its uses are. If you really know how to use and abuse stakes, and your opponent doesn't, they're just used to these corpse pile weirwood thing, then, you know, definitely like give that a go as a way to controlling your opponent. But the problem is if they do actually know what they're doing just as well as you do, and yet they manage to get the, you know, they want it to be a panic-based game. They put down a corpse pile. You put down a palisade because you think you're being special, and they're like, I love palisades too. Here's another corpse pile, and you're like, another palisade, and they're like, right, so I got the, they put down like stakes or whatever. They're like, I got the stakes that which I quite like, and I got the corpse piles that I want, and now you're just in trouble. So you got to be careful with it, but. Yeah, there's a lot more to terrain than people give, but like I've heard, you know, like people try and discuss like, oh, what's the best terrain and stuff, but it's way too nuanced to know. To me, terrain is about identifying what your opponent's biggest strength in their list is and whether or not you have a way to minimize its strengths with a certain piece of terrain.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Dark Winds, Dark Words. Then we finally get on to talking about this. Take one mission deck. So first of all, we've got one mission deck, and we remove 10, 11, and 12. We shuffle the remaining cards and place them face down, and before deployment, we draw and reveal 2 cards. They become active. Then we draw and reveal 2 additional and paste them next to the active ones. They become reserves. So we've got 2 known active and 2 known reserves, I'm guessing. Yeah, they're both revealed. So 4 missions in total, 2 active, 2 reserve. Beginning round 3, you discard the 2 active and replace them with the reserve, and then you refill the reserve. So you can always see what's coming up next turn. Big criticism of previous mission type decks was you didn't know what was happening next turn until the next turn was here. This was a classic in Dark Winds, Dark Words. I like that. That's straight away an improvement. You could have done that with the old Dark Winds, Dark Words without changing anything, and it probably would have just made the game better. Straight up.
Yeah.
So that's really good. And this is important. If you run out of mission cards in the deck, you reshuffle, you recycle. This is the only time we've ever seen a mechanic like this occur in Song of Ice and Fire. Actually reshuffling and going back through. So I think that's really good as well, because it means that the game isn't exhaustive. It's not just over. You know, you can have these things reoccurring. Now it gives you an extra NCU ability. When you claim a zone, you discard an active and replace it with one of the reserves, or discard a reserve and draw a new one from the deck. That's good, because you can change missions that are bad for you ahead of time, or ones that are bad for you now. Love that. Pretty good. And lastly, there's an extra rule here. There's tons of extra rules to this game mode. During a commander's activation, they can forfeit their action, discarding an active mission, replacing it with reserve, or doing what an NCU does, discard the reserve, replacing it with a new one from the deck. There are, 2 to 3 ways pretty much in every given army now, be it that through commanders, be it through NCUs. Every single one of them things can now change what missions are available.
Yeah.
Lots of cycle, which can itself be a bad thing. Too much cycle and you just never actually score anything because you set yourself up for something and by the end of the turn you don't do it. But what do you think? What do you think overall?
Feels like there's an element, as you say, of understanding what's coming in the future. But my initial viewpoint with having played it is that there's too much churn. There's too many ways that the missions are going to swap, and that it's going to be the go-to strategy to churn missions until they're favorable to you.
Yeah.
Is, without having played it, what I see from the outside. Maybe that's not actually true. Maybe it still plays out on the table really, really well, and feels a lot of a card game and not a lot of an on-the-board game.
It's a bizarre one as well, because the scoring is you score the missions as you score missions, right? But then you can score any of the active missions. Now, interestingly, it doesn't say starting round 2. At no point does it say when you start scoring the active missions. It just says each revealed active mission can be scored. So,
yeah. Beginning on round 2, players score 1 VP for objectives.
Yes.
But
nothing
just says that you score missions. And they're revealed right at the start of the game, right?
They are revealed at the start of the turn. And at the start of round 3 is when you start cycling them automatically.
Which is weird. It really feels like their intent is that you only score them on round 2, because why wouldn't you cycle them on round 2 if they're being scored on round 1?
Agreed. But they haven't said that in the document.
But they don't say that.
So, whether or not
play what they say.
We play what they say, yeah. So you can score active missions on round 1.
Not my problem. Dark Winds, Dark Words, not in the World Cup.
No, it's not, is it?
Not my problem.
Not your problem. Actually, that's very true. But +1 for commander scoring as well. It's a weird one, because obviously this is a weird mix between just controlling the board and controlling the mission deck. And
yeah.
I do feel like this is going to snowball massively if you've got any of the cards that control the board at all. Because you remove 10, 11, and 12. And actually, that's most of the control ones, actually. Right, okay, so that is the objective control ones. So you're never going to get double down except from Unit 1, Mission 1 perhaps. So you never really double down though. So that solves that kind of problem a little bit. Yeah, initial thoughts there though. We'll move on after that though.
I wasn't sure enough about it to include it. I think that Winds of Winter is more instantly playable.
Yeah.
I don't think this is unplayable by any stretch. I think that Winds of Winter is the better secret mission one. So let's start with that. See how people react to the secret missions. See how people feel about them. It could end up being a complete tournament staple. I doubt it, though. I doubt it. I think that Winds of Winter will be the standard go-to secret mission if people play secret missions.
Yeah, I can very easily see this one being kind of like, I'm just going to get rid of any cards that you can score that I can't, and the person who does that more.
You might, and exactly, it could be way back into insignificant spam control. If I don't let you score on the board, and I constantly use my actions to make all the objectives be unscorable to you, then you're back to not scoring.
Actually, interestingly, discard one active mission and replace it with a reserve mission. You don't refill the reserve mission.
Right.
So there are 2 active, 2 reserve. Yeah? You can discard a reserve and draw a new one from the deck. Or you discard an active and replace it with one of the reserves, which leaves only 1 reserve left. That's why the current rules currently say.
When do reserves get refilled? Because at the end of the turn, the active missions go away and the reserve missions come into play.
Yeah, it does actually say draw 2 missions from the mission deck to replace the reserve missions. It says in the same bit. But it doesn't explicitly say unless
but what if there aren't 2 reserve missions right now to become active missions? Yes, I'm going to draw 2 new reserves.
I'm guessing.
I've moved them.
I'm guessing this bit here. If they do, you may discard 1 active mission and replace it with a reserve mission, or discard 1 reserve mission. So those are the 2 options. Either or, you do those, you draw a new reserve mission from the deck. That must be what it means. This bit here. Yeah. Sorry to labour on that, but yeah, that must be what it means.
It's not in. It's not in. It's not in for these reasons. It looks like it doesn't play smoothly. Like my initial reading of it isn't like, hey, yeah, I see how all that's going to play out. I think that's going to be a great game mode. My initial reaction is, oh, that one, maybe.
Yeah. Right then, honed and ready. So honed and ready, we've seen lots of time before. They've changed the deployment as always. They've got rid of the objective token in the middle. The objective card in the middle. Basically, the key here, the big change for me, is that terrain with the impassable keyword may not be placed on the board. That's no Palisades. Palisades actually the only one, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, hills. No, hills are. No, I'm sure there's another.
Hills don't exist. Hills only exist in the world where we get to make up our own terrain keywords.
I know, right? I've got to say hills though, otherwise Carl will have a go at me. That's really the only change. Everything else is basically the same. You get the +1 victory point for the commander, which we're seeing across the board is just like a general thing now. And you still have the NCU replacement effect of D3 plus 2 hits, and the end of the round D3 plus 2 hits.
I still like it. It's still just a better Game of Thrones in the current meta. In the current meta, where Game of Thrones will still be strongly in dog favor, but then that also means weak chaff unit favor. Like chaff units to sit on objectives is not a great idea in this mission, and that's much better. I would much rather that objectives, even if they were slightly backfield, needed to be held by a unit that mattered.
Yes,
I think this is a great game mode. I've always liked Honed and Ready. It's brilliant. I love it.
I mean, in some ways, they've made it even better for those slower units now, because with the extra couple of inches of being closer, I can see Baratheons loving this game mode. Honestly, like as it things stand, even Lannisters absolutely adoring this. I think that plays into the defensive factions a lot more. So that's good. I
think it's good. I like it.
As a defensive faction player.
I mean, I'm a Lannister and Baratheon player. What can I say?
Exactly.
I like it. At least I wear my bias.
See,
Mickey.
I don't wear my bias. Look, this is a wolf. I don't even wear it. No, I mean, I'm massively biased to Free Folk. But the thing is, I play Free Folk and Baratheon.
I'm the best Night's Watch player in the world. Don't forget.
Oh, you are actually. I forget that. Like legit. You forget that I am a Free Folk player as a main, as the only faction I physically own. But my two other played factions are Targ and Baratheon, who are the opposite ends of the scale. So, anyway.
I've got some desperate nerds asking me to come and play computer games. That's how you know. How you know things are bad.
Oh God, you're gonna go play WoW? Dear.
Of course.
Right. Anyway, we've got to go through this. So,
Dance
of
Dragons.
Is this in? This is in, isn't it?
Dance of Dragons is in.
Yeah.
Still good game mode. I like. People will be glad that Mute NCU is gone.
Yes.
But really, like it's the same game mode that it was. The slow movement, not being able to run away with the tokens, but holding them in that way is very interesting. Is this the one that now, after completing a melee attack on a unit controlling an objective, the attacker has more remaining ranks than the defender, and they claim the objective? That is a huge change, actually, to the dynamic of like really good morale units like Poor Fellows just grabbing the token and then just surviving with it, and you just being pissed off because they never drop it. They don't have to run away. They don't try in position. They just stand there and take it, and they're like, I'm not going to fail a morale test, and I'm just going to keep healing, keep using Wealth of the Rock, use Mercy of the Mother, use all these things, and I just become this waste of time. That you can nuke this unit, which has no offensive capability, and just take the token off it, whether it passes or fails the morale, is very, very important. Big change to the dynamic, I think.
Massively so. And, mentioning Poor Fellows there, Poor Fellows are a classic unit because, in the end of the day, they never used to fail. They never used to fail morale. The other aspect as well, it's really good in the Free Folk matchup as well, because it was not unreasonable for you to take a unit of Free Folk off. Let's face it, most attacks will take a unit of Free Folk off. A rank of Free Folk off. But actually, it came down to whether or not they failed a panic test, which was likely.
Yeah.
But it really frustrated players when it just didn't happen. Whereas now they don't have to worry about that. It just happened. Done. Deal with it. And also from the counter side of it, Free Folk, ganging up on things and not having to force panic damage through, just being able to gang up on something and actually just outnumber it as an effective way to control the token as well. Massive positive there as well. So I think it's pluses and minuses across the board. What were you going to say?
Well, no, I was just laughing at some desperate nerds.
There is actually another thing I was going to say, actually.
I do think that the random objectives versus the old objectives of the Mute NCU, and even, I think that people, because it was on the opposite side to the Mute NCU, people used to not really care that much about giving out the vulnerable and, I forget, is it weakened? Vulnerable and weakened token?
Yeah.
I think that was a really impactful objective too.
It was.
What we had these two super impactful table-wide impact objectives on opposite ends of the table, and what we had was a terrible one in the center in general. Sundering and whatever was not worth the D3 wounds that you did to yourself.
Vicious or something.
Yeah, I think it's that, and like it was not worth having. Particularly, that was before you even if you overlapped any of those keywords into things that you already had, it was garbage. It was garbage to have the center.
Yeah,
that they're random. People won't like because they'll go back to I got beaten by a random draw of the cards. But as we've seen, all the objectives are roughly equally weighted, and they don't have table-wide impact anymore. So it's much more about fighting across the whole board as opposed to just stacking the whole table onto the Mute NCU side.
Yep.
I think small incremental improvement to a game mode that was already very, very good. People loved it. People loved Dance with Dragons. It was generally, whenever I asked for feedback on what was good game modes that people liked, it generally always got the best feedback.
Yep. Yeah, I think this is going to be good. I think this is going to be a good game mode. What I also like is the fact that these Stark Berserkers who run around on one rank, who can't ever lose a token because they fail a morale test, sod that. You're losing a rank You're losing that token every time. Which kind of also makes me a little bit worried that I've gone overboard a little bit, because the Stark thing of doing damage to yourself, is that just going to make them basically never control tokens in a Dance of Dragons. So they're going to need activation
Possibly.
advantage to do it later on in the turn.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Stark at 8 out of 8 factions in 2021. I'm not complaining.
No. No. Here we stand. Now here we stand.
It's crap. It's crap. Don't. It's crap.
Is it in
Nobody
the
likes it.
World Cup? Is it in the World Cup?
It's slow. It's slow, and it's slow, and it's so much math and just like really balanced on where you put units. I'm not interested in it. Like it in its beta state, I liked it because it was aggressive and fast. And now, because of the redeploy, it's slowed down. Because of the way you count up your quarters, it's slowed down. And because there's no benefit to controlling an objective in a quarter in your opponent's side, yeah, my least favorite currently. Currently least favorite.
Yeah, it's one of the only game modes as well that still maintains the 18-inch deployment zone as well. Yeah.
Almost feels like they forgot that they left it in. Like it feels like they gave everything else a pass over, changed everything else, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, we made that into one of our official game modes, even though we were changing all the game modes."
Yeah, we won't go into that one anymore. I think Feast for Crows. This is in, isn't it? Which is largely the same, isn't it?
Pretty much. Does it also have after completing a melee attack, a unit controlling the objective? It's same rule as Dance with Dragons. It's just a blanket rule now. If you hold tokens and you used to drop them because of panic, you now drop them because of panic and because your opponent has more ranks than you. Again, same reasons. Mild improvement to an otherwise pretty well received game mode.
Yep. Yeah.
10-inch deployment used to be 6-inch, I think. It's gone from 6 to 10, not 12 to 10.
Yep.
Again, better. I think that it used to be a lot of a race. No. It used to be a 12-inch deployment. It used to be a race where movement 6 allowed you to grab the token on first turn. But now 10-inch deployment doesn't allow that. It means that cavalry can, and I think that's an improvement too. I think that 10-inch deployment is a very subtle and important change to the game in general.
If they're at 24 inches, which they will be, 24 inches, 12 inches, 22, you might... Hang on, is it the square root 2 or something like that you gain?
Yeah, you get about 1.5 inches, but don't forget you're going into a corpse pile, so you lose an inch.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be able to touch it, definitely.
No movement 6 should get there anymore.
No.
One objective token. Yeah, place 1.
It's all the same, apart from that.
Do they have objective cards? Yeah, assign 1 random objective card. So yeah, the bigger change is probably that these have objective rules that come with them. But it's not a huge impact because we think that the objective cards will have a medium-low impact on the game.
Yes. Although the shift 3-inch card might be quite good, I think, in this particular game mode.
That's true. That's true.
Because of the extra maneuver, effectively, that it affords you. Okay, yeah, pretty good. The same 1 victory point for each, and
command game mode,
+1.
Like it. Not much change.
Oh dear, 6 Fire and Blood. So we see 6 to 10 coming out again. Then you select 1 from each until you have 2. So marking units. When a unit is marked, you select an objective card and give it to that unit, and it gets the effect as if it was controlling it. So similar kind of thing to what we saw before with the objective cards being used by your commander, but now being assigned to units at the start of the game instead. Yeah.
Everything else says that in 1.7, corpse piles no longer reduce movement.
That's right, actually. I believe they don't.
So under
they got rid of the
rules,
they got rid of the rough.
It just doesn't have the keyword.
It doesn't have keyword rough.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Movement 6 might actually be reaching those tokens turn 1. I retract my statement.
I'd have to do the maths. I don't think you can. Because it's only route 2 that they gain route 2 on the perfect possible distance, and route 2 is
1.4 inches, and
1.4,
isn't the token over half of it? Yeah, maybe I don't think you can quite make it. Maybe I think you might be like 0.1 away. Bet you someone's just gonna knock their tray and then be like, "What? I made it!" Like there'll be so many, and then you'd have to sit there and prove to them mathematically why they can't make it. I mean,
we've done that here before on Tourney Ground, so you know.
I've had a guy like charge me, deploy a unit in Clash of Kings and on the table, not on TTS, because obviously TTS you just like, well, no, that's wrong. On the table, like put a unit of cavalry on the table and then try and charge me when I was like practically in my own deployment zone, and I had to go through step by step with him saying, no, please measure that bit, rather than just like throwing your tray across the table and saying, yeah, that was a march. Some people and their movement.
Yeah, interesting. Fire and Blood no longer prevents marking 0-point units.
It doesn't.
So dogs can be selected.
I think that's quite a big change. It makes wolves in current meta a liability.
And bear spam.
And bear. Ooh, don't they say that they never give up VPs?
God. Though? Let's not go down that route again. Actually, yeah. Ignore I said bears. Redacted.
Yeah. Don't say bears. Say watch marshals,
drawers.
Not that they were zero points, but they are big liabilities in this game mode.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed a lot. Having a token is probably worth a lot less now that you get a keyword rather than 2 attacks, depending on who you are. What matters a lot is that you gain it for using abilities to kill people as well as your straight attack.
I was going to say
makes like marking a unit of trappers very dangerous. You know, if they can use their D3 traps to pick off a solo, then they're getting tons of points from that.
Yeah. And that's very clear that they've added that in as well. It's very clear that that is something that either should have always been the case, or that they're now saying is definitely how it is working from now on. So yeah, I like it to some extent. I think it's going to be good. I think it is going to be good. What I like is the fact that
and yeah, Grush talks about the fact that the major keywords that it gives now, they're melee only. Yes. So giving so archers are now a very good target to mark.
Yeah. Which is probably a good thing. Storm of Swords.
Not an official game mode. Thank God.
I'm not going to talk about it because, like, I don't think they've changed it. I don't even know if they have changed it.
No,
if anyone's not played it, go and play Storm of Swords once.
They haven't changed the attacker defender cards, right?
No, they haven't changed the siege cards
at all. Probably not changed anything about it.
Just go play this game mode, guys. It is fun the first time you play it. And then when you get to the end of the game, you're like, hang on, wait, that isn't as fun as I thought it might be. It's by no means a bad game mode. I will freely admit it's not a bad game mode. It's just you cannot put this in a tournament. Like
it's wildly asymmetrical.
Yeah.
It's wildly thematic in terms of defender and attacker and stuff like that. Oddly enough, actually, if you try to play this competitively, the defender shouldn't defend most of the time. The defender should be really, really aggressive. It's weird.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Weird thing. And then we get down to the objective cards and the mission cards, which we've already talked about and had a look up.
They're the huge change. They're so much better. They're so much more streamlined. There's so much less variance.
Mm-hmm.
Variance is what tournament players hate. Variance that they can't control. Variance that they think stops them from winning a game before they've even played. So I think that overall it's a massive improvement, and that's why we're using them in the World Cup. That's why they're there, not because I'm like, hey, they're new, let's try them, and not because I'm like, oh, they're official because they say 2021 on. We're using them because they're better.
Yep.
The only one that I'm not sure about is Dark Wings, Dark Words, and I think that it will work itself out.
Yes.
Other than that, we've got a good set of game modes, and I picked 6 of them because I literally roll a dice, sat here on my table, when I want to determine what game mode we're going to play in a given week. Roll a dice, see what it comes up. Have we played that before? If so, roll it again. And that's how we determine what our week-to-week game modes are, and that's why I picked 6, and we'll end up with 5 of them.
Yep, sounds good to me. And it's exactly how we'd play back in the old Giles Gate Community Centre back in those days. Do you remember those days? So, no, it's starting to become a no, isn't it? So there we go, guys. There's the game modes and our takes. And well, it's been a long chat. It's been a long chat about them, but here's our takes on all the different game modes that we see there. It's only been about an hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes talking about game modes. So guys, that is that where it stands. Tournament news, there hasn't been a huge amount of tournament news. There's some little events being talked about, things coming up, and stuff being talked about. But I will warn you all now, it is looking like, say, future tournaments is looking pretty dire. Not because there's nothing much planned at the moment, but I think we're still not sure what's going on with the world. And I think this is probably the best time to tell you all that we have been in lockdown in the UK for various points, and it's been various levels of seriousness. And about 20 minutes ago, we've just been told that we're going into the next, basically, as serious as it has been in a year. So we're going into the point where leaving the house is basically becoming illegal again. And that's not even
Good
a joke.
news, everybody.
By the way, that isn't even
cares,
a joke.
I'm sure everybody cares about what our lockdown status is, Mickey.
I'm sure they do.
Of
course,
the point
is,
I always tell you, like how mental I am on my videos is mostly related to how much of a lockdown I'm in. So be well prepared for plenty of mental. Because that's what we're in. We're into peak lockdown. Peak. Not going outside. Also, it's only sunlight for about 8 hours a day here in the UK, so there's not a lot going on.
I'll just leave. There's the absolute best. I'll just leave this with you, just so you know, guys. We will obviously TTS will have to kick back off again for our sanity. Hence the reason the World Cup is, I think, where me and Carlo are going to be pouring a lot of our energy because there won't be anything else to do. But the first line is people cannot leave their homes except for certain reasons, and that'll be like going and signing a check for a bank or getting your eyes tested in Barnard Castle. Those will be the two reasons you're allowed to go out. But anyway, guys, we will leave it there for this week. Carlo, any final thoughts, anything about the World Cup you want to mention?
If you're on the waiting list, then you either haven't paid or you haven't told me that you've paid and I've missed you. If you're on the waiting list and you think that you shouldn't be, you need to message me. I will be sending out messages like every day from now until the sign up. If you're not on the Discord, you're gonna miss it. Like, you have to be on the Discord, guys. That's where all the messages are. If you know anybody who's thinking about wanting to play, then there's plenty of time to still sign up. Sign up, get involved. Looks like we'll probably be around 32 players per event, which means that we're likely to be about 8 qualifiers per regional. Off the top of my head, I would probably guess that we'll probably end up with 9 or 10 from EU and 7 or 6 from the US, based just on rough current numbers and the strength of them. Prediction: Canada gets all the NA slots.
Yeah.
Ooh, there are a couple of Australian and Asian sharks in amongst that pool too. So I'd watch out. You might be right that NA might not get any NA slots. That is not an impossible. Or sorry, America, USA might not get any NA slots. I would say, just make sure that I'm going to give you a barrage of information. Please, just if you're unsure, then have a look and message me. Earlier you pay, earlier you fix your lists, the less I have to keep tagging you and saying, please do this. But you will get plenty of tags over the coming week.
Can I just say, I mean, just as a quick shout out to those Canadian guys, you can't quite see them on the, because of my cropping there on the image, but we've got Enline Ariaka Standor, Deepest Meep, great name, love it, and Khan Artist. And we've also got, up here, Rohan and Nod Nerb, which is, I always say Knob Nerd, and I shouldn't because it's Nod Nerb, but it's a great name. All of those guys from Heroes World. All of them.
Yeah.
There's like 6 or 7 guys there, all from Heroes World. So I think that's a massive shout out to those guys. Great community. Getting them all on TTS and all playing the game still. I think that's brilliant. So that's the NA. And then EU, all the usual EU names. I still have to pay you, don't I? Ugh.
Should Groose play double MOD or MOD plus a list I won't play? Go on, give Queen of Marine a go, mate. Give her a go. Put her in. She might throw your opponent off because they might think that you're not going to play MOD.
That's
or,
true.
Actually. Why not? Go Belwas. Go Jorah. Stick something else in there.
If you, I mean, if you want a genuine thing, definitely go Belwas. Go Belwas Targs, because I think Belwas is a good. I think he's a good shout actually. I think he's got mileage. Or go Belwas Attachment
Get ready
and really feel the
for
brunt.
the less killy meta. Get ready for that less killy meta. That's what Belwas. That's what Belwas was built for.
Yeah, definitely. All right then, guys. So thank you very much for joining us. We will be back next week, where we will of course be looking at the World Cup, because all of the lists will be. Are we going to do? Is the list to lock on the 10th? Is that right? Or 11th?
I think the list is locked on the 8th.
Oh,
The
brilliant.
list will be locked, and pairings will have already been revealed by next Monday.
Right. So we'll look through the pairings,
List
perhaps.
on the 8th, revealed on the 9th, tournament live come the 10th.
Yeah, so we'll look through some of the pairings. We will obviously, more importantly, look at the statistics. We'll look at the breakdown of all the different stats and what heroes, which things appear more, which things don't appear more, and we'll start looking at some of the interesting stuff we can see. And until then, guys, thanks a lot for joining us this week. We will see you later, and I hope you enjoy your first week of January just as much as I think me and Carlo aren't.